Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm finally doing my nails after like 3 weeks.
Um, yeah, I'm out. I'm in this process of getting to my nerves that I don't have my nails for. I think should be now 3 weeks. Yeah, even more could be. Like yeah, when I was in Aachen, that was when I finished Aachen, I cleaned them, and I was thinking that, but it just takes so long time, such a time. It looks takes some time.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like the biggest change from last year.
No, this is so weird because like I just sent you also a message that I think I did different things, but that's why I also send it up and keep it as an archive there. Because then now I'm trying to have this reflection of, I mean, the audio I think helps me to break down stuff. So then I think my intention is to use that archive material somehow because I think it's easy to
Mm,
navigate the chats that are mixed with different things.
I see.
I mean the video chats, these chats.
Yeah.
So the last part when I was saying there's something about I was criticizing how capitalism something something
Okay.
and then also in relation to me coming from Colombia and
Okay.
and then now we speak about our problems. This is the problems that we have in the north of Europe. We don't have time to paint our nails. This is
True.
the problem we have.
But it is.
Because it is a problem. I know that's why I'm laughing because like we speak like I felt you when you said that. Yeah. 'Cause I also feel like it's getting into my nerves now. It's
Yeah.
becoming a thing. I need to do it. But then I can't avoid to laugh because I was being very serious on this critique of capitalism
Yeah.
and relation to asymmetries and some things. And now this is where we are.
Yeah.
Contradictions.
Yeah, like the biggest change since last year is that like last year I was using this peel off base coat. I don't know if I told you about it, but basically it's like water based and after some time you can peel it off instead of like using acetone um, like a remover because sometimes like I make a lot of layers and it becomes very annoying to use the remover to get rid of like 5 layers of nail polish. So this peel off, you just peel it off and that's it. And but also the problem is that it won't last so long. So after like 1 week, it start to, chip and in 10 days probably like it's a disaster. So now I'm using the traditional base coat, which is like more like a long lasting because I need it for like 2 weeks, right? Which also means that yeah, I'm like taking much less time compared to how I did last year. So, anyways,
These are basic needs.
yeah,
Some
exactly.
people, some people, some people need to eat. We need to take care of our nails.
I wonder how easy it is if you go to the salon. Like I've never been. Like I have to confess, like I've been doing this, nail salon performance, but I've never been to a nail salon. I never entered a nail salon, I think.
So people go to the El Salon, so people are trying to don't be killed in Gaza. That's what we do.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I don't know, there's so many ways to approach the performance you shared. So I don't know
But
where.
maybe it could be interesting, like because like you sent a message before, and I found this interesting, like this weaving. And I was mentioning something very particular with the weaving, but maybe just like give me what is like. I don't know if you have also have the time to listen to all of them. I guess last all the
Last one
messages.
I haven't, but
Yeah.
other ones I listened. Yeah, I
Okay.
was
Yeah.
like
Cool.
jumping back and forth, but I
Yeah.
listened to the thing.
Mm.
Um, but I think two things. I mean, the problems you mentioned, I think I mostly, I mean, I agree. And what else did we say? Did you say, or like we didn't say? One thing like related to the book is that the problem with this performance is that after 10 years, if they have a chance to do it again, it will look very old.
This
Oh,
one,
yeah. Because
like you mean the performance that I just saw yesterday?
yeah, because it reflects the time of like now, the trend. It's really hip. And that's a
But
big.
although I don't know because this is comes actually from it's COVID times. So now we interpret it in our times because of what is going on with wars.
Mm.
Uh, but I think it was meant that time for the so and this idea anyway of the utopia and society is always a thing. You know, it's like the humans always have this. So I'm not so sure that not my
Well,
it,
maybe more the aesthetics. Well, aesthetics quite big part of it. Like if I look at it, like
I would say I would agree more like from the form, so like the aesthetics, yes.
yeah, form or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I mean aesthetics in the sense that as a media, because
yeah.
it's pre 2020, well, like 2020s or 2010s, I don't know, whatever it is. Um, that, like because I was reflecting on, like other performances, like if you look at Rosas, even if it's like, decades ago it's made, it still look fresh, right? I mean, depends on what.
I think, but that's the problem for it. This is interesting that you mentioned because my perspective for it, also being growing my career in Belgium,
Mm.
is that Rosas, no matter what they do, it
Mm.
like the new productions look old
Because they set the
because the tune is
form
Rosas.
back
So
then.
the song is Rosas, so it's the same with Bandakeus. It will be Bandakeus. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's true. Like then because they're iconic, so
yeah,
they're point of references. So then as you said, when the show Rosas Dance Rosas still is so relevant as I mean not relevant I'll say, but it still is like it has this
yeah,
um it is that piece that is still was there.
yeah. But it's true. Like what they make is old or yeah, reflecting that time because they set the format in a way. But that's not what I wanted to say. I was trying to like reflecting on the book because I don't know if you saw like what year it was published, but it's I think it's 97.
Yeah, 95 I think. Or yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
And it's funny that it's like even like more relevant now, right? Than when it was published. Like that's how I feel.
No, totally. I think that's also the fact like why like I think Simon Don it's so hyped is
Mm,
you hear about Simon Don everywhere.
I see.
Yeah.
And then like I try to think, well, not that, um, like being over or self-confident about our performance, but like what does it like how does it look like after like 10 years if we see our performance or if someone sees our performance that we're doing now?
Okay. But I think like this is something I think is will be easy to dive into music. And this is connected because I talk a lot with now with Nadalena yesterday. Now. So I think in music, for instance, like there are bands who they adapt very well during the years and they also evolve. So I think one of them, from my interpretation and my taste, is like Metallica is one of these bands. You know, it was so there were these kids with this hype and this music in the
Yeah.
90s. But then during the year, I mean, and they haven't stopped because some bands stop for a while, and
Mm,
Rolling Stone, other bands stop and they come back more with longing of the past. But Metallica is some a group that has been steady non-stop, and they have evolved their music. They have evolved and they have adapt. They brought also the problem also with capitalization of music with Napster. And wait, they just let the airplane pass. So in that sense, I was mentioning that, for instance, Metallica is an iconic band. You know, it's a reference in music,
Yeah.
and but they have evolved. You know, like they have evolved, and they are very different of what they were like in the 90s.
Mm,
The music also is more it has passed through different things, and uh so for instance, if I can say from things that I have seen at some point, I think in the 2000s, 2010, 2010, I think they explore also through, I think, trends of what is happening in media, but also music style, their outfits, you know, like the art in general of what is Metallica. But I think at this point now they are like dudes, they are close to 60s. So it seems to me that they are more, they stopped trying in a good
mm,
sense. And in as in like they are not experimenting so much every time. So they are just like, it seems to me they are now just naturally changing. While some years ago they were like focusing in adapting and trying to change from that bands of the 90s being kids to just try to not get lost with time and then just to be still relevant.
mm,
Uh, and I think now it's interesting because they are iconic, they are Metallica, but also they are dudes in the 60s. So when you go to see a concert of them, it's not like you're not trying to see them when in their dog years, you know?
mm.
Like and I was saying, I guess, this like the example of Metallica because of relation to like they say Dance and Rosas. That's not the case with Rosas, for instance, about the cables, and that they are that point of reference.
Yeah.
The productions have
So,
not really adapt.
yeah. Yeah.
So wait, so I was trying to connect because you were saying like trying to think and like what how would be, which would be very interesting. I never really thought of that in the future.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think one way how I think of that is that we should be busy and trying to uh capital. I think we used it like we talk, or I used these words in the past not too long ago, to capitalize the opportunities that we have at the moment, because we never know how things go.
Yeah.
uh so in this idea of legacy somehow, then I think then is the legacy, I think, is mediated through the production means that you have and how you can uh, how that is archived also, I mean, within culture.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if my point was that, or like if I'm actually, um, if I if I'm understanding my point, but like, mm, not not so much about the legacy, but like how does it look for people in 2030, 2034 to look at our piece? Like, does it look like, oh, like it's a technology back then, or is it like, it's still relevant to them? And I want to make something that's still relevant to them, I think, because we're not really making criticism on the technology right now, or it's not really a criticism anyways, but
Well, I mean, I will disagree because I see it, or I'm trying to work towards that I think like my work is, and that is, but it comes from best practices, I think. So it is in best practices, it's a criticism, or it that is just a framework that allows for reflection on the use of technology. So in my case, I see it as a, so I'm trying to reclaim space to feel and think in
yeah,
this relation productivity time when working with technology.
yeah,
So then For me, it is there. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I agree. But like my point was that, we're not like talking about specific technology, or like in that case of the performance that you saw, it's very specific about like the form, let's say,
Yeah,
about,
cinema.
yeah, cinema and this like rave, and
Yeah.
this is probably not relevant anymore in like 10 years.
Okay. I see
I
what you
mean,
mean.
cinema,
Yeah.
yeah, but probably like the way they approach cinema would be slightly different. And then like the problem is that if
But
they see the same performance, well, if they have a chance to do it, it captures your eyes, like in a different way, that, oh, back then it was like this. And it's hard to like relate directly to the society in 2034 or 2030, whatever.
yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is, right? I mean, if this is about pop culture, sure, I think it's no problem. But if it's something about, if if you want to make criticism, then it should be somehow not generalized, but something you can extrapolate. Like, and what we do, for example, is, for example, like using Hydra, probably 2034, people are not using Hydra, and it might still, look interesting. Because if we're just showing Instagram, okay, like, then people would see like, yeah, we had this back then, or the young people were like, what is this? And it kind of like takes away the criticism part, and just, yeah, becomes like a point of reference at best, but it won't really tells you the story which we wanted to tell. Which,
But you know, in that sense,
yeah,
yeah, like, yes, go
I
ahead.
don't know. I mean, then is it something we want to do? Are we going to perform this in 2034? Well, I have no idea. I wouldn't say no, but that's not really my point, like just to think about this now, so that maybe we can, yeah, reflect on our approach by thinking about, well, 10 years, 20 years in the future.
The way how I see this actually, because it's part of like the criticism I feel from some audience members yesterday, is that I mean, I relate to the performance yesterday, and also then, I mean, to relation to what we do. So then to enter will be through the performance yesterday, and then I think that they were very formative or very conservative with the form. So the film, I think I mentioned that in one of the messages, like it was not really, it was like this mediality through, like, say, like the film being the focus, or just the film. It was not so experimental. It was quite old in that regard. It is not representing what is happening with the trends now. Um, so some of the people were saying that perhaps that was also coming from this idea that they need to, so there was an aesthetic choice in insisting in certain form, which is that form is so that's not the form that is not responding to what is happening these days. It's an old form, and
Yeah.
also the aesthetics always being used is not new, is old. Um, is, I guess, more in the meta as a totality with the rave and different things they're trying to do more as a happening festival, so on. But the form is not experimental at all. So all,
Mhm.
like for me, for instance, I will be sometimes the images was glitching because there were video streaming all over. So sometimes the images were
Mhm.
glitching,
Like
and
a
that I found
radio, like wireless.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that I found very interesting. So I thought like that perhaps could be something that, I guess, but more from my biases, that I will be so interested in see how they could play with this aspect.
Mm.
That I think that's more contemporary, but that I think will speak to just some audiences. So I think it's somehow the intention, or that's what I hear from people saying. The intention was like they speak more in a um genetic way somehow to address everyone. So from more this common ground. Um, yeah. Uh,
Interesting. Because this is like related to the second point. Oh, maybe there are like 10 points I wanted to make, but the 2 points I really wanted to make is that um, the problem I saw is that from the images and the text, I can imagine what it is. And of course, it's something experiential, and I can't criticize without experiencing the performance. I can say that, but also I can imagine how it would like look like, and what you sent, like the messages you sent me was not surprising. I would probably make similar comments, and that's sad. You make big
yeah,
production and you
yeah,
do
yeah,
something
yeah, yeah.
that is like Disneyland.
I see.
Because you
So
go to Disneyland not to be surprised, right? You know what it is. I mean, maybe at least the first time you go to Disneyland, you will be excited. You don't know what's there, or any amusement park. But the second
mm,
time, you know what it is, and you know that it's going to be fun, so you go there.
this is interesting. Yeah, because actually that one of the, I mean, I saw part of my friends were leaving. So it has these chapters, and the last chapter is the rave. So this rave
Mhm.
is happening, as I said, is like in the pauses during the 6 hours,
Mhm.
but at
Yep.
the end, it's gonna be a rave.
Mm.
So some of my friends were leaving before the rave, and so I was asking, they said like, I mean, you got it, it's going there. So so it's true that if you really give, I guess that if you through the elements as you said that I send you, you know, and yeah, I agree what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, which is sad, of course. Like, yeah, then what is the point to go into the theater then?
Yeah, I mean, then it's entertainment, because it's going to be fun. If you like to rave, then you go because it's it's fun. But if you want to, you know, um, yeah, yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, 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 and especially I think like in the content, I think this interesting. That what I mentioned this, I think is very important to because we are in this ethnographic space. I think it's so relevant in this space on the content. I mean, say for instance, we are not there, but like they like the way how the Kunsten Festival portrayed this is as a somehow relevant. I mean, the Kunsten Festival is positioned in Europe as something that is you show here often things that are very relevant to the performing art scene in Europe.
Yeah.
Oh, so then the way who is being seen is as a, oh, this is a critique to capitalism
Mhm.
somehow. That's the way how they try to sell it.
Yeah.
So it's an artwork that is trying to have this content, political content, right? That's how they sell it, but
Mhm.
it's not that at all. It falls really short in that. It's not doing that. I think
Or
it's
it's
doing.
just a meta that you can, talk about it in that way, but the performance itself is not carrying that, right? I
No,
mean,
but yeah, exactly. But that's what I found problematic because that I mentioned in that there was maybe that was the last message that I sent. That is just so problematic because it just feels like just art masturbation, like just it just feels that is just possible because you have the means to make it possible.
yeah.
But so it just stays like as is capitalism using the co-opted theatrical spaces to criticize capitalism
Yeah.
that is not going to touch capitalism because capitalism is the one who is making it.
Yeah. Co-opting everything.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that about that. And yeah, I don't know if anything that like further comments I want to make. But yeah, it's very like, yeah, it's very problematic. Um, very how do you say, ableist, or I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they had resource, good for them. And I have respect to, make people like doing big things. I can't do that. So
Mm.
like,
Yeah, I also was thinking like who wants to that was yeah, reflecting on some of these things. But like let me share like maybe just the last message because I think it's relevant to like this point of ethnography that is where we are.
yeah,
I think and so if I just share, I think it's let me see if you hear it or not.
Yeah. Again, yeah, as an audience, this novel idea of content, of challenge capitalism with the RPs is not meant that doesn't meet my expectations, where I feel that it's quite cliche in different ways. And I guess in short, I don't allow the content to touch me because, as I said, you can see that it's one of
Wait.
these situations that happens often where I think that happens often in conferences. You see people that speak about the problems, about, say, for instance, institutions, and there are institutions speaking about it, no? But it's not, so it's something that stays conceptual, but it's not really, let me just break it down into the performance. As I said, like the labor that is being done, because there's so much labor, like all that labor, um, it's capitalism. Uh, and so it stays as in the artwork is happening there, very elitist, very snob, with very possible extracting and using people, really not paying people enough, not taking care of gender, all just capitalism at its best, co-opting the theater apparatus to portray something that it tried to criticize it itself. Capitalism. So of course, I don't allow that to touch me. I feel like this is very fake and a big hypocrisy from which I'm part, being in that moment on stage. So so this is a problem, no? One way who I was like thinking that, and this affect I'm concerned to us. As I said, I think the form is absolutely striking. You know? It's hard not to like it because you have all the mediation through the technology. Um, but So if we go back to this idea of so I think that the problem I have in short is that I cannot connect. I have no empathy of the makers because they are just a group of white people, like 80% dudes. So a group of white dudes going with this idea of revolution. So I'm skeptical because I cannot speak only from my subjectivity. So within my own identities. So for me to try to jump on their idea of revolution as a gesture through the theater piece, I need to have empathy with them, and I cannot because of my identities and I don't know them, right? So, therefore, I think the ethnographic aspect of a piece in these circumstances, I think, is very relevant. Um, and that's what I mentioned, us, like the process that we are, and that could be interesting. Because, for instance, if so, I guess the problem is again is that I cannot connect with the maker, or the person who really, because I just see actors. So, but it doesn't have, yeah, I cannot connect with a human, because it seems just like a fake story. So ethnography could be I think is necessary in this framework. Because then you share something about your struggle as human, in a way that is relevant for the content that you are trying to build, not as in complaining how, oh, for me, people feel compassion about me, my struggle, coming from the global south or something like that. But you share your struggle in a way that it's helping the content that you're working to be more accessible for the audience. So in this idea, so then going back to this performance, if I will have some help understanding the maker, and doesn't have to be necessarily the maker, but the artwork as a unit, from where it comes from, like the ethnographic process of the piece, then I guess I will be more susceptible to be empathical with them. But without that, it just feels like, to be honest, like a huge, as I said, like just uh, the art. Uh, yeah, it's sad because it seems that it's capitalism co-opting the art venue to critique capitalism. So it's really, I think it's, I think it's not good.
I don't know if you were there when um after Node 20 at the bar, or I don't know if it's a bar or a club, but Allah was saying something about utopia, that basically Allah doesn't use that word because it comes from colonialism, that they were looking for utopia. Right.
Mm.
So since then I was like, okay, I'm not going to use that word. I know that people use it in different ways, but yeah, I guess this in this context, this is like the worst. I mean, it kind of captures their intention in a way, in a bad way,
Mm.
in a bad, I mean, in a critical way, let's say.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking that, I mean, I think like I'm interested in, said, like, regardless of the time that we have, like really the conditions that we have at the moment, um exploding, I use the words, like the possibilities of the productions that we have in the spaces where we go, um in clusters that we can call chapters or the scenes or something like that. So as an example, when you propose like this weaving, I thought like, okay, that could be interesting. What if then, so we focus on weaving, and then we use all the theater apparatus to mediate weaving, um, and to position that in a way where people can relate. And that's why I guess here the ethnography is, when I see it, that it takes place that, so not only speaking from an academic perspective or what is weaving in relation to some problem that we see, but more position ourselves from within and then sharing that with the audience in a way that they can relate to that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as we talk or do things, idea will develop, but I think that's good starting point, because we're not like, especially in the practices, we're not really like trying to manifest anything by doing, yes, but while doing, we're not really conscious about the statement we want to make. We're just doing it, and then we reflect on that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why that I think that's why I'm going back to this idea of, somehow it's connected with legacy, I guess. But not from speaking from like, people please remember me, but more about like trying to make a point that is valid, and it's the state. Uh, so as you said, like I think and I agree with you that in slowing down, or be careful in to not deploy so much, because we are good in just like in deploying and working. I think we are so good because we have been practicing for 4 years. So there is this trust. I think Ljubljana was a totally like a point of the cherry of the cake, on the, like, in 2 weeks just deploying a performance that in form it is there. You use the thing that also you're supposed to use like for the framework. So we are good in just jumping and creating form that it has cohesion. But then I guess, yeah, the next step and is in being conscious of what is the message. So what is that we are trying to say with that?
Mm. Right.
Because also being conscious of that, part of, I guess, the a point that maybe I can start reflecting on that is that from this ethnographic perspective, is that I understand my position, my privilege as uh some uh somebody coming from, like, to my position of me being here and having these opportunities, so that I have voice for other ones who don't have the voice. And that's something that I would like to be conscious, not in order to become a politician or like trying to go official,
Mm.
and but just to to also acknowledge the my ancestry also, and my people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know, like I'm still in the group of the Maestria. Like maybe there are like 20 people in the WhatsApp group, and sometimes people just post random contents, or like when there's like someone's birthday, people start sending messages. So I sometimes also do that. It's really funny, like I mean it's a really cute group that they finished, almost like 1 year ago, and they're still like connected. And I think it's also like especially relevant in Colombia or um that region. I don't know. That like solidarity is just embedded, right? Like that's the way you survive in a way. Like in Japan, I think it's very different because we're, how do I say, like I don't know if it's privilege is the word, but it's safe, and you can live alone almost. But it's very different in Colombia, and
I see. Yeah.
yeah, just saying that. And also, like, I don't want to put this into like a part of the performance, but I noticed that this is now it's part of my life in a way, which is kind of funny. I mean, I don't know, WhatsApp group, is it part of my life? Well, yes and no, I guess, but yeah.
Hmm.
And sometimes I
But
send you memes that are posted on that group.
wow, yeah. But let's come back to the heat, yeah, for a second, for something.
Yeah. And yeah, right.
Yeah. So I was thinking, now that you're mentioning it, because you mentioned WhatsApp, and I was like, wow. So one of the problems that we have, or that's established somehow, is that people cannot relate. I mean, as analysis of the panorama, dance and technology, humanities and sciences, is like people cannot relate to, like, the humans cannot relate so much of the technology, like why to use the technology on the stage. So it's
Mm,
so far, that, like, the closest thing that people have to technology is communicate. I mean, it's communication technology.
right.
So I know, I mean, we are not working with that, but maybe it could be interesting to, for instance, now just you say WhatsApp, I just start like going there, like, say, I don't know, it's something about WhatsApp, of like, yeah, messages. Uh, if there is something, as a concept that people understand, it is that it's Instagram, social media. It is something people can relate, because everybody has, I mean, or people who can, most likely people who go to see it, they have means to have access to this, so they can relate to that. They
Yeah,
can, it's not live coding, you see.
right. Yeah.
I
Actually,
mean, so that said, so I found this interesting, and I found that it makes totally sense to put it there. But also, then this is like the idea, and then where we are, it seems to me so far away from there that that how to make it fit in a way that is not just like smash it there, like to just
Yeah,
fit there.
shoehorning.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. No, like I was thinking like I had this idea for some time that, I want to like work make some kind of work that's like out of like dating apps because nowadays like I meet
Really?
people. Hmm?
Like, so we just put a quote mark because like Peter, since I know Peter, like he always, I mean, he repeats different times since I met him in a personal level. He said like one of the last things that, or this a project that he always wanted to do is to work on a dating app
Oh, okay.
as an
Interesting.
artwork. So please, go ahead.
Yeah, no, because it's just about, but not about like criticizing anything because it's just these days, like, I don't know, quite some people I meet is through dating apps and like how can I approach that? But also not in a sense that I don't want to make any criticism or anything. It's just like, just showing part of my life, but like how can I do that? I don't know. Because if we talk about dating apps, then people would immediately think about something. I want to make some kind of statement about it, or is it about capitalism or is it about I don't know, but I don't want to go to that direction. I want to like, live peacefully, not making like a big statement, although my works are about it, but like, I want to make something dumb or like something like stupid, just easy, but has, carries something. But it's hard.
Totally. No, but totally. But this is very interesting. When I just put it here as a what's up. Um, no, um, dating app. Uh, I mean, this is like when I was doing like the designing art thing, like that was like at the core, no? Like to make something that it loads the threshold so that everybody can jump in, but it still is an artwork in the sense that it should be back then my idea should be decomposed or be interesting enough for some other for having different access. So people who wants to try to conceptualize and go more in depth into what is the art piece, uh, but also just enjoy if it's like so in that sense like like if it's a dumb app that it just does this then it just does it and you don't have to reflect on what is more about it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it totally makes sense. And I don't know how.
No, but this is interesting because I think now I start having some like this is I think you touched something I found interesting and that could be also part I don't know so I see this with the interaction wall like I mean the idea of interacting this is like the core of the piece no
Yeah.
so that maybe there is something through that there might be something in this idea of communicating that's why maybe it kind of work or at least so I did it just for a hunch of like to interact with people to put that paper and I guess it worked in the sense that people it's just piece of paper you go on and write and you write to someone and it's you have total agency as an audience like if you don't do you can just watch but you can also go and trying to say something
Right.
in any level at any level so maybe there is something there in the
Yeah.
uh so like for instance like going more in depth into that idea is in this idea of communication so interacting with each other or with different aspects of the space but when you mention dating app that communication that is flat it's just communication when you mention the dating app it goes to a different space it becomes personal so that it goes that's more situated
Situated in a sense.
in the sense that is like I mean a dating app is I mean if you just communication it's just you communicate anything but if it's a dating app
Mhm.
there is like I mean there's the framework of the dating app there
You have the objective and yeah,
there is yeah it could be
goal
different
oriented.
yeah yeah so they're yeah you can say it so yeah I think that's a way to see it it's like communication. I mean, the means of communication is like, of course, like the goal is intrinsic in the way that I want you to understand me, but I might not be saying more than just understand my words. I speak English. Do you understand me? While the dating app is like situated in this, is embedded in my intentions. It's goal oriented in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. There's something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, like when I work, I tend to make random websites,
Right.
and somehow like find, constellation. It was a bit like it was like also like part, like that was part of the process with Floor, because we're kind of building the space, but also like making random websites, and some things fit, some things don't, but that's part of it. Which is also, like we could try to, I mean, we did like, also you made some programs with like the, not the, yeah, like voiceover, like the one that talks with the generated text, was it? I forgot, but and we were kind of like doing starting to make random, I would say, like sketches or prototypes as web pages, which is, something we could also try again, so that we don't have the pressure to think too much about how this fit into the performance, but try to just put random things and find the constellation, what can fit, what don't, or we can just put up
You
QR.
mean like if you work in that way, like then you there is already like you just need to find the constellations where to place it because there are many prototypes. That's what you're saying? If you
Yeah,
work in that sense?
yeah, like afterwards you start to see, what is relevant, what is maybe not relevant, or yeah, that's the constellation or curation, you can say.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted now suddenly.
Yeah, I think that's interesting and it's part of the workflow. So that will be so the less, I mean, in order to maximize the effectiveness.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm just gonna close the window because it's a bit hard. So in order to make it more, yeah, to use the best, to do the best we can from the resources, it means that we should find ways that they are not like in this sense, for instance, like with your workflow, like there's a workflow you have. So you do it, and by doing it, then you find where it belongs. And um, okay, I agree with that. Then some reflection that I guess I'm throwing in that I think we need to start talking is that in August we won't have the and that's and that comes a lot down to you because you're the person responsible for the technology somehow in the team as in paper.
Yeah.
So that
Mentor.
in August, and I mean I'm saying this because I want, or that's also that we something that we have to consider is that we work so far in this way. Horizontal is the practice, right? We support each other, but also I guess we think that, for instance, I think a good example of that is that in Ljubljana, like then I guess like you trust a lot, and I was proposing certain things, and you didn't question that much. You jump on it, and so then we support each other in that sense, right?
Mhm.
Um, so for instance, we need to start thinking in order like to make you more free for us. We need to start thinking again in, for instance, in the live coding aspect and the interface. Uh, that's one thing that I think we should have some work done in advance so that you don't that when you are there for a month, you are not just deploying or having this double flow because that will be detrimental to the work.
Yeah.
Although that said, also we can also, that's what I was mentioning like the past, that we support each other. So we can do it as we can, advancing the work in that aspect. Specifically, I think we have to tackle this live coding because this what also I think Nuno would like to see. I think there's expectation around live coding, and then decide or not is the artificial intelligence or not there, which also we can decide. I don't think necessarily has to go there because we are in charge of our own piece. So even if you do not don't like, so be, like that is a decision that we have to take in common, and then we can talk also with Danny, maybe or not, in the detail, that we decide um how, because it seems to me still like live coding as well, the way how we work, and artificial intelligence seems a bit quite apart at this point. So we can decide that in time. But nevertheless, I think we should start like talking on, yeah, I mean, actually more than talking is just like trying things, trying things, testing, trying to have feedback from different stakeholders, in order to try to actually free space from you in August.
Yeah, let's see. One thing I noticed is that these days I'm trying to read, trying to take some time every day to read, but also like I need to take some time to code, because if I don't code it, you know, yeah, if I don't do it, then I will lose this, like, it's not a skill, but it
No,
is
no, I
something you
totally.
have to practice, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I relate to that because like, I mean, these days I don't code that much, and every time that I do, it takes me so much time because I have to refresh. I have to literally type in Google things that, yeah, just the flow is just, yeah, it's leverage. Yeah.
But it's also like maybe like, finding the workflow. For example, like you could start thinking about, how to like use ChatGPT efficiently and effectively. So, just deploy something real quick by asking, but you have to think about prompt, because it will generate something dumb. But there are ways to, work with it. I was trying a bit to make a bit more elaborate processing sketch, and it has like a lot of capacity, but it's really about the prompt you
Yeah,
make,
yeah.
which could be like interesting avenue to think about. Then we could also claim that this is like partly AI based because of that. I think I need to do the laundry, but I will switch to my
Yep.
headphones.
Yeah.
Just a second. Am I hearing? Yes,
Yep.
I think. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's something. But like, I was a bit like, now that we are talking about the way we work, and I got a little bit mad because basically they're trying to write a paper about this, right? Like Nuno and William. Wait, am I hearing or not?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ah, yeah, okay. Yeah, because they're trying to write a paper about what we do, right? Basically, the initial idea. That's kind of like, I found I got a little bit mad now thinking about it, that we're putting a lot of energy, and if their idea is that they take it as a kind of, not a use case, how to say, case study, and write about it, but we definitely have to be in the process of the writing if that happens.
I see.
I mean, yeah, in a way that, this whole Modena thing is a little bit sketchy in that sense. I mean, I guess you kind of raised that point earlier when this, Moco paper and etc. But now that I think of, like, it's very sketchy, I have to say. I'm sorry if Nuno is listening to this, or William is listening to this.
What is sketchy?
So like, okay, like analyzing what we talked about or what we are doing, that's very like scientific part. So there's, definitely like credit to the researchers who's analyzing it. There's no question about it. But the creation part is done by the artist, right?
Right.
And that has to be credited, or like even like the kickoff meeting and so on. We're the one who were feeding them, right?
I see.
And that's kind of, I mean, I understand how these things work. And for example, in their paper, artists were not credited. Sure. And also like for my paper that I interviewed people, I think they won't be credited as author. Maybe one of them might become a co-author, but that's to be, but that's not about the credit for the interview, but credit for the co-writing, co-authoring part. And that kind of like makes me question, am I fine with this process of like taking artist's brain and producing academic paper?
I think like, yeah, because I get now your point. I think one way how see, because I think we also, that's part of where we're coming from, or this is my interpretation, is like being technicians, being in that struggle place where artists credit technicians' work, so not right? So we're coming from that space.
Right.
That one way how I see it, because I think it has different dimensions of problems. Well, I think one way to do that is just, even if the text gets longer, just to write down the people who are, I mean, especially when information is shaping, if the contribution of the artists are shaping the paper, then they must be there. Like, sorry if you have to write 2 more lines or 3 more sentences, but it must be there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take so much work. It's just like to just like references, like, I mean, just I mean, because this is so, I think it feels wrong now. I start getting like pissed off, because then in this paper, like, I don't know, if the paper is 5 pages, then like 2 pages or 3 pages are references. So then in a page, so in this paper, so then you have so much like care about the references, well, from where you're referring, but you're not referring about the people.
Right. Yeah, this is like a big question. Also, I have like, I always talk about Caroline Sinders, but this feminist data set, because she says, we should credit, or like we should be able to refer to, like, for example, like email conversation, or, or someone said something, this should be something that you can refer to, not just about, books or academic articles.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially in a path like this, is my, I guess, my interpretation, or like my what I guess I wish also you could do from your research, is that it has a more meaningful aspect than just a flat paper that it just speaks about how brilliant are the scientists that are writing the paper. I mean, just like doing what has been done in the past, but then, so in this idea of like challenging authorship, yeah, and making more meaningful because, and it's not only because I think it's my personal willing, but I think it's just, if we're working at the intersection of like sciences and humanities, then it must be meaningful. It must perform differently.
Yeah, totally. Like this is like bigger scope. Like I'm trying to think about my research, that, because I feel like now I have to, or at least this has to happen in parallel, that the topic about like how can we work with dancers, like as a like a generic term, a generic like a question, because we can't do this, like what we just talked about, or like, for example, I'm visiting rehearsals, and we can't just apply how researchers have been doing in the lab to a rehearsal studio settings. Like we can't just, for example, bring cameras and record everything. I mean, if they agree to do it, sure, but it's not something that you can generalize in a rehearsal situation because most of them don't want it, right? Or if you do it, then it has to be like properly credited because it's part of their work. You can't just own it. And this is like something that I feel like we need to, I think Sarah is doing as a kind of practice, but I think this has to be like formalized as a research in itself. It's a bit meta, but like how can we work with dancers? This is something like I feel like it's very relevant. And
I think you're in a good point that I think could be also relevant. No, I think it's relevant in say in HEI, and because it's not only about like writing, say like it's not about like a manifesto or something, but it's like if you're speaking the language that is like, so in the terms and in the language in the medium that is used in the academia and your context, then it's not about challenging like the structure as such a priori, but is in using their language to in their language understand that the structure and the language and the medium being used cannot be the same if you want to do something that is in that case like how to work with dancers. You know, you cannot do it as like you were working the lab.
exactly. And also like I'm interested in, you know, like how can we interpret their language? Because yeah, like what dancers say, or like, you know, some artist or whatever that coming from different field, like normal HCI researcher, or someone who doesn't have background in dance or like art or like a relevant field, they won't understand it, right? What, or they will miss important point, or or at worst they will misunderstand what the dancers, artists are saying. And this is something I think we have to, again, like when it comes to Sarah, I think the way she approaches it is that her students try to, you know, get involved in like dance workshops or courses so that they have like extensive knowledge, as you know, to become a perfect practitioner, which is, I think, the best way to approach this question. But you know, there should be like different ways to, like, entry points to tackle this. And
Yeah, but at the end is like, but this is like a serious research, like, and I think that can, I mean, that's a side, I mean, that's a research in itself, you know, like
yeah,
choosing positioning that, because it means that you have to go through literature, like again, because then you have to use the language that they use in the academia, so that you have to go through literature to position why is that this is not valid anymore. So this is like a, it seems, it is so important. Well, but it's not the research I mean, what I'm saying is that it seems that this to be accepted as something that it must be reflect upon, and if necessary to think and maybe to restructure certain ways of working, it must be portrayed through the classical means of I mean, that's my understanding. How can say a board of people who decide things will consider
you mean to
why.
build upon what's HCI's like?
Yeah, I mean, like to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
speaking somehow is like it, because I guess my understanding of this is that it should, it's important to acknowledge all the things that you said. So not as a case of not as in the way, for instance, Sarah is doing, or maybe I will do, or Nuno will do, but in understanding there is that the structure or like the paradigm as such in that intersection is not working. Is not fully me, or is not respectful, I think. One can argue. But then if you say one can argue, then you have to say why it's not respectful. Because I think one can argue that is not respectful somehow.
Mhm.
Is not, I mean, and I could say like could be not respectful, that is very subjective already, but it can start from a place that is not functional, is not effective, you know, like that's what I mean. Like, so like from their language, then use like you can start it's not effective, it's not working at the end. But then what it comes down is just at the subjective level that is just not respectful. It's just not right.
Yeah. And then, like, I think the core is the subjectivity. I mean, in various ways, but like specifically to like the methods, how we work with dancers, it's more or less like qualitative, like talking to dancers and, and that's like subjective. And this is something I've been like having, discussions with Nuno. If you're watching, thank you. I might be a little bit harsh, but yeah, he's trying to say that whatever we extract from qualitative study, it has to be like it should be able to be reproduced by others. So if I understand, if I come to a conclusion from an interview, if another researcher look at the interview, they should come to the similar conclusion, just broadly speaking. But that's a big problem because it has to be subjective. So no one can come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
And that's not just me saying it, but the method we're using, it's called thematic analysis. Basically, it's about understanding how to say, we go through the text of the interview, we codify it. So we have to come up with different code to mark different lines, and then we start to find a pattern between different interviews to find more like overarching topic around what is relevant to the research question. And I'm reading this book, How to Do It Properly, from the inventors of, well, not the inventors, the advocates of thematic analysis, and they emphasize that it has to be subjective, and you have to really reflect upon who you are, where you're coming from, and how you're related to this topic. So, for example, me, I don't have dance education as in my childhood, but I am involved. So this is something I started to be a bit aware that I should not say I don't have bad dance background, because
Yeah, yeah.
I have a huge dance background if you like compare to other HCI researchers. But this kind of thing I have to reflect so that I can start to analyze and
Yeah.
like be
But
critical about
this is, but I think you're touching something that is interesting, that yeah, I think like the big problem, as you said, is like it's just the paradigm how is through quantitative uh, models.
qualitative.
Uh, yeah, quantitative. I'm sorry. Then so it seems to me is more like a paradigm. So it's like that's what I was mentioning, that only people. I mean, it to imagine something like that to happen is it just has to go to that in that scala form of relevance thing. So wait, so that's all, but already that's said. In the ethnographic aspect, when you said then I think it's important, yeah, that when you said like so that you don't have that experience, then of course then you cannot be part of that ethnographic aspect. I think it's more important than to understand then you situate then your dance experience, and then why your dance experience is then relevant in your process as HCI researcher.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that's something I have to, I should write more about my reflection. Yeah.
But it's hard. I mean, I understand it's hard because that's what I meant. Like this is like it seems to me that's like a different research that you're doing, because that's serious research where you have to situate why is relevant. So then you have to go through literature to just position the relevance in HCI of you speaking from your experience as dancer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think fortunately Sarah has been doing this. Although, you know, but the point is that if she's doing everything right, then I don't have to do this. But or it's not about right or wrong, but I mean, this is the thing. Like, there has to be like different approaches to this problem, and also, yeah, we have to be critical about each other, not just she's doing. I mean, yeah, she like, you know, we have to be critical to each other, and
Well, maybe actually that could be an interesting point. Like, but I don't see it because I could be partly because I don't understand completely the structure that you're working in. But I think one way to go through that, I say like to portray the problem is that you being the part of the problem, you know, because then you are like the dancer, but also then you are the researcher.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. That's the
But the problem exactly. Then I understand what you said, but it's subjective. So then for the academia, like for the science, to take that into account is like, but why we have to take is this is how it is that relevant to all the researchers? Like how I can jump in that. So
mm,
then you really need to situate why is that relevant for everyone.
yeah, right. Also, like the book I'm reading about qualitative analysis, it's interesting that they mentioned that, I mean, they're coming from humanities, you know, so it's not something that we can apply as it is, but basically the research question doesn't have to come from, you know, a gap or like what's not, for example, like the way I'm trying to situate my research proposal was that because people could benefit, we hypothesize that we people or dancers can benefit from, let's say, online platform, but
Mhm.
there's no online platform that's actively used, then we just make it. And I think
Right.
that's valid, but it doesn't always have to be that way. Like, even if, for example, well, I talk about Sarah, but Sarah has been doing this, and if I do a similar research, it's still valid. It's not about, because it's not about just reproducing what she has been doing. If I do it myself, then we'll have different outcome because it's subjective. And I think that's totally valid. Um, but
Yeah,
again, you have to situate, I have to situate myself in the HCI context. It is true. Yeah.
yeah, and especially we spoke on this in some sessions before, especially because if it's your case, if it's the case, then so the problem is then there is so then there is not certain interface that is for dancers to or to help them. Then if you do the work to do the interface, that's is being the case more that the apps or the websites, those things have a spam life that is very short.
Yeah.
So in terms of research, like in using resources, I think that back then I used also this idea of resources. Like then you use the resources of a PhD to create an interface. Then in time it just dissolves, and it stays just as archive material that also has problematics in terms of functioning because it's is living in browsers and the technology changes,
Yeah.
so it will die more in time than if it's something that I guess is more down to paper or like more research than in building an artifact. It stays there.
Yeah. And especially like if I start to create a framework of, like, let's say, how we can work with dancers, that's much more, yeah, it can be transferred to other people, or could be other domains as well. And
But
it's almost like contagious.
yeah, but that's what I remember when I was doing my thesis, and there was the bachelor thesis. Like, on Peter was like also there were some of the feedback at the beginning of the research is like, so what is the object that you're working towards? Is it an artifact? Is it an interface? It is an art piece, and so I frame it as a framework. Which
Mm,
framework is just very broad,
yeah.
and I guess in the context of a bachelor is totally fine, because they don't have the time to go in the nitty-gritty and trying to go with me. As I said, I have this higher score because partly I think they didn't understood of what I was doing. So, but I guess more in the place, so more in like in the place that you are, so in the PhD, like to propose a framework, I don't know, I don't even think like if it's like it seems to me that it's very hard to imagine. I could imagine that be more possible when you are doing a when you're a professor, you know, when you have like already a postdocs and already you are in the, you know, you have the space and then you can have, yeah, the space to be listened. The people can question their own securities as academics. Like, is it possible? Because as a PhD, you will be right away starting from your supervisor, like questioning constantly. So it won't allow you to go in depth into waters that you need to navigate without knowing necessarily where you're going.
Yeah. Yeah, I get the point. And I guess but we'll see. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but that's why also like I feel like maybe this cannot be the thing for the thesis, but maybe I have to do something in parallel, but let's see. But also,
Yeah.
anyways, this is like something practice based, so there has to be something. I mean, practice based in a way that research has to, it's not just theory that I will read and reflect and write, but I have to do something and observe. So there will be something like as an
But maybe
artifact.
like before like time that closes, because I think we should close here. Like
Yeah.
I think could be interesting also related to the practice that like that you in parallel. I think indeed this research like of it could be more like in parallel that you should do in long term. So, but for the practice and also in communicating with people will be useful so that we can use that because you have the information. So that could be communicated also through audiences and stakeholders. Why is relevant that that happens?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's about writing the paper. I mean, that's for specifically in HCI, but I think this has to talk to broader audience.
Right.
Great.
So nice. And next time.
Have a nice Sunday.
Yes. Ciao.
Thank you for watching. Ciao, ciao.